Almost awake. Almost awake. What's up, coffee blurs?
It's definitely a thing that happens for hiring managers to interview a coffee nerd, find out that they got plenty of experience, and then explicitly not hire them. You know what? I really want to hear about your experience because you said that you don't think that hiring managers discriminate against like experienced folks, right? At coffee shops.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been my experience. And when I looked at what a lot of the comments were with the people who responded to you, a lot of them were saying stuff that I definitely understand, like people are afraid of people coming in with bad habits, or people are not wanting someone who might necessarily have opinions that go outside of what they want at their shop. And that's definitely the case in some scenarios, but in my experience, like, it's more about personality. It's more about people are not necessarily I guess, okay, I'm gonna step back a second. There's two like kind of cafe managers that I think people are thinking of. One is like an inexperienced cafe manager who, I should say, an inexperienced coffee person who is managing a cafe, who maybe has certain ideas that they just want to stick to, and they are too scared of an experienced person kind of coming in and going against that. And I can't tell you like what percentage of people are like that, but I definitely encounter those people, and that's bad. But in my experience, like, people who do know coffee and are cafe managers always want experienced people to come in, and as long as they are willing to, work collaboratively, then it's ultimately good. Now, there's always a fear, at least in my experience, that there's an experienced barista who just wants to tinker around with coffee and isn't there to really provide service, which I've encountered some people like that, but that's more of a personality thing. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're an experienced barista. It just means they're kind of like a coffee bro. Like, I just want to like tinker around with coffee all day and not pay attention to customers. Like, that's like, I think, a fear of some people, and definitely one that I've experienced, where I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do here, even though you are experienced. Like, you still have to help clean the floor drains. You still have to help do all these other things that you can't just delegate to the inexperienced baristas. I remember doing an interview once, and I was preparing coffee as like part of the interview, and I think the shot ran like super fast. And I went to go adjust the grind, and the manager was like, "No, don't do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "Yeah, we dialed it in yesterday, and it should be fine." And I was like, I was like, "Well, the shot is pulled really fast." So and he's like, "Well, let me try." And then they tried, and it still pulled really fast. And I was like, "So should we adjust that grind now?" And so
I hear from a lot of people in hiring positions, mostly online, that you kind of touched on it, that they don't want to risk hiring someone that won't conform, that won't just do what they're told, if they have a lot of experience. And I kind of get that, because I do encounter a lot of baristas who are like, yeah, I know everything from working at like this one shop or whatever. But I also take umbrage to it because I'm one of those people with experience that is open to learning other things. And I'm not going to question or like the way one coffee shop owner decides to do things. And so the assumption that I will, because I've worked at a lot of places, is really annoying. In my experience, it's the people that have not worked at a lot of places that tend to be like, I know better without actually knowing better, because they haven't like spread their wings enough to know that like there are other ways of doing things. You're not always right about everything. I don't know. So I'm so annoyed, honestly. I'm to the point where, like, if I wanted to pick up a few shifts at a shop, I'm considering emptying out my resume, being like, okay, I worked at Starbucks for a year, and that's it.
I'm wondering, I mean, again, we're also like working in kind of totally different markets. Like, I'm in LA and you're in Illinois, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know like what that market is like. And it's kind of funny to hear you say that, because I feel like a lot of people struggle to get that foot in the door here, where they are only looking for people with experience because they don't want to train and don't have the resources, the time, whatever, to train. So like, that's why I was really surprised when I saw that answer, because I feel like a lot of shop owners are like, can do latte art? Because I can't teach anyone latte art. You know what I mean? Just like I need you to be able to just do it. And so that's part of why like I feel like it's easier for a lot of experienced baristas. But I'm wondering if maybe like people see, I don't know what your resume looks like, but if people see a lot on there and are kind of like, oh, you're not going to be here for that long, maybe, and
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
might think like, I mean, that would be my first thought if I saw a lot of short stints, to be like, and at the very least, kind of be concerned that I might pour a lot of resources into training only to have you leave.
Yeah, yeah,
That's my first. Like, and it is a lot to train. But depending on where you are, like some shops I know just kind of like spend a day with you, and then they're like, okay, like you're fine. You should be able to do it. I know I worked at the same place for like 8 years, and that training program was very rigorous. And so like, if we didn't think someone was really going to stick around, that wasn't something we wanted to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
But also like, I don't know, there's so many factors that come into play, like it's hard to know like at any given point what the deal is. Are you have you ever talked to any of the managers like when they were rejecting you, I guess, or like or saying, I know when they were like, sorry, we're gonna give this to somebody else, or what?
Yeah, so no, not really. And that really would be the best, only way to know for sure, like why didn't choose me. So that would be a smart thing to do. I talked just to, I think just once, one person, I was like, so we had a really great conversation the other day. Why not me?
Yeah.
And I mean, they were just like, oh, we thought someone else was a better fit, which is what I expected the answer to be. It's because what else are you gonna say?
Right.
And I'm sure that was true as well. I feel like the coffee scene here in Chicago is really closed off. I was talking to a couple other people about this not long ago, how here in Chicago, like people don't really talk to each other. Coffee people, like in coffee shops, like they're not really connected. It's not very much of a thing to like share knowledge or to have like group coffee events or anything like that. So I think maybe that can make a difference. There's a lot of people that, like I said, do work in just like, they've worked in one shop and they've worked there for, whether it's a few months or a few years, a lot. It seems like every place I go, for most people, that's been their one shop. And so I think that makes it scarier to hire outside coffee people, because you're even more concerned about, because like, you have this mindset, like we do things this way here, and outside, like I feel like actually a good metaphor is like small towns. Small towns are scared of outsiders, right? Because they're not exposed to different people. And so that's kind of how I see the coffee scene here. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, it's definitely harder now, like post-COVID, but I do think the LA coffee scene was definitely very communicative. Like I went to so many coffee events pre-2020, and like I would say almost all of the barista jobs that I've had were from like a friend of a friend. So, or like through someone that I knew. And that is also like, again, like a very specific experience to me that I know a lot of people don't have. But like, for a long time, I didn't even have a resume, because like, it was just like, I just moved to, I was just like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. And it was like, and they know because they know that person. So like, if you're dealing with kind of a community like that, where people aren't really talking to each other or like know of each other in that way.
Comments here. Jackie says that onboarding new hires is one of the biggest investments for businesses, as it taps into the time resources, which costs money.
During 2020, like again, a huge turnover of staff from my previous job, and the time, like that, it was kind of all hands on deck for training then. So like, at that point, I wasn't like a trainer in any respect, but I was running classes and trainings for entry level baristas, just teaching them, coffee basics, because we had so many new people who had no idea what they were doing, and we just were trying to get everyone up to the same level as quickly as possible, which is why it was so surprising to see like so many people feel like experienced baristas are not getting are not wanted by cafes, because I feel like most people are just trying to get someone who knows what they're doing.
I think that's what I would think. I really get the impression that some of them don't want to hire someone who might know more about coffee than them. It's almost like sometimes when I'm talking to them, I feel like I've entered a battle, like because I'm talking about my coffee experience, and then the manner in which they start talking about theirs, it's like they're competing with me, and I'm like, I don't want to be competing because I'm here for a job, you know? Like, so I've tried different tactics in those cases, like one, like agreeing with everything they say and kind of keeping my mouth shut, like kind of claiming up until they ask me something, versus just like actually trying to like have a real conversation. Like they say something, I give my thoughts on that or whatever. And like in either case, I just get this impression that like they don't like that I've studied coffee on my own, or that I talk about how every coffee shop like does things differently, and that's what made me curious about coffee or anything like that. I'm like, oh my God, it happens especially when they're younger. And they've been, you know, they started off as a barista and they've been a manager for a few years. They kind of all like sit the same way too, like, so I run this place.
I don't know if you remember like 2010 going to coffee shops or something where it was like cool for the barista to be like kind of mean to you or something. Like, I
Right.
feel like that was like a period of time in specialty.
Yeah,
And
that's the character we see on TV all the time, where someone's just like, "Can I just get a coffee?" Well, yeah, my roast meter,
yeah.
blah blah blah. That's what we're still seeing on TV.
And I feel like some of those baristas are like cafe managers now. You know what I mean? Like, or cafe owners now.
Daryl said
Yeah.
we don't talk about that no more.
You know, there's an authoritative thing, like you said, where they want to be the person in charge and want to be the person who's deferred to,
Mhm.
and are afraid of like someone coming in and then maybe other people on the staff not listening to them so much because here's this other person who knows more.
Yeah.
Again, that's like an insecurity thing that, you know, like people just need to get over, really, or just like, you know, establish a communication with you and the other staff of like how you're going to work those things out. Because, you know, again, there are those baristas who are like, I know better, and like what you're doing is wrong, and I'm going to make sure everybody else knows that. And that is also not a productive way to to be, you know, in a cafe space.
This has been working for us. Why change anything? There's not really the thought that, but could it be better? So it's like, this works for us. Asian barista says that one of the baristas moved up to Chicago and had such a hard time finding a job, and that she was one of their best. Yeah, something about Chicago, man. That thing that you talked about where it was real cool for everyone to just like be mean and know it all already, and that's just like ruined it for the rest of us that aren't that way. And your friend Jay says if anyone is open to a non-coffee job but with coffee industry heart, I've got something open in the OC. We would love an organized and thoughtful person to join us. Okay. Not a job hire alert on the live. That's cool.
It's like, this is the spot where the baristas are.
Azra says it depends. If you're working for a larger company, even if what they are doing is dead ass wrong, you have to be like, sure, Jan, and just do it, because there's an education department that's always checking in. Okay.
Yeah.
There's this other place I worked at where they had like a dedicated trainer for all their locations, and he had put a lot of effort into the training program. And you know, baristas that have such high turnover, and people would leave as they do, and he was like getting really upset because like I put so much effort into building this training program, and people just like leave after a few months.
You kind of need to work for a roaster cafe, like a cafe that is part of a roaster, just for like, because in my experience, a lot of times people who are roaster accounts or like, you know, like have that kind of distance aren't necessarily as invested in the coffee as someone who like this is our coffee and this is a branch of that. We're trying to sell it. You know what I mean? And so those are the ones, in my experience, who want really experienced coffee people the most. Mm-hmm. I can't really speak as much. And again, this is my personal experience too, because I've probably worked for more roaster cafes than I guess auxiliary, either multi-roasters or people who are wholesale accounts for a roaster. And I think there is oftentimes a pretty drastic difference between the two, especially partially in management as well, because there is, when you're a cafe that is a part of that, there is more of an incentive for those checks and balances of like, how are you serving the coffee? Are you representing it in a way that's really good? Versus a cafe that's just kind of like, you know, we do whatever we want here and that's fine. No, you know, like,
this is kind of random, but I just remembered that my very first barista job, it was at a Starbucks, and I got that job out of pure luck, really, because the hiring manager happened to and recognize the name of one of my references, like I knew that person or something. And that's the only reason they called me in for an interview, because when he was talking to me, he said that I seemed overqualified. So like, why do you want to work here? And it wasn't because of any coffee positions. It was just my experience before coffee. And thinking about it now, it's really interesting that that's something that people would like think about or say, because it just kind of shows that in a lot of places that means that they don't consider being a barista or like coffee like a real career option.
That's definitely, yeah, definitely weird to kind of expect someone to only be giving like a little bit of effort
Yeah.
or to hire someone like making that. It's just hard to believe that a cafe owner wouldn't want someone, or is specifically looking for someone who isn't interested, like who isn't interested in the job that they should be doing. So I don't know, maybe there's an expectation that this person has something else that they're doing, but maybe, again, that's why I think, like, if it's a place that has a roaster connected to it, they are going to be looking for people who have some investment in the quality of what is going out. Thank you so much for having me on, and oh, hey, Erica. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck, and everyone all those baristas out there who are struggling.
Okay. Ezra, you asked that where do you want to work in your city, or what's your dream job? Where do you want to be? That's a good question. I like to be everywhere, all at once. I like to have my hands in a lot of different things. So my ideal job, or what my ideal career in coffee looks like, is not anything that's typical. I think I would like to be a consultant for cafes looking to find their place, for cafes looking to serve their community, helping them figure out how to best do that is something I enjoy doing. I also really enjoy training and coffee education. So I'm a contract barista trainer right now, which I have a lot of fun doing. People who are actually interested in learning, I like helping them. And especially if it's like an extended relationship, I like seeing what they learn away from me and learning from them in turn. I also really like just like anything where I can get in front of people and talk about coffee. So currently that often comes in the form of like education settings. Like I did a private cupping yesterday and got to just talk about coffee. So the primary like goal, like reason I was there was to kind of do educate on coffee, do a little like, cupping or whatever. And it turned into, which was my goal, like just a conversation. I got to learn about everyone else's tastes and preferences. There were people who didn't drink coffee, people who loved coffee there. And we got to all like experience different and similar things in the coffee, and it was a lot of fun. It also like broke out into a lot of like side conversations. It turned into conversations about appropriation, about slavery and race. It turned into conversations just about the science of caffeine, the science and process of roasting. It was all just like really interesting, and anything that puts me in a room of those people who are interested in just talking and learning and sharing, I'm down for. That's very vague, not specific. So I'll just say I'm still figuring out. It's a long ass answer, Daryl. You said there's also how well the job is incentivized by ownership, like pay raises, benefits, etc. You as a hiring manager, you feel guilty about trying to leverage professionals' experience for pennies. Okay, for some reason I cannot comprehend things that I read out loud. So let me read that again. Also, job is incentivized. Okay. You feel guilty about trying to leverage a professional's experience. Okay, that makes sense. That kind of reminds me of the first person who hired me as a barista, who said that you seem overqualified for this. You sure you want this job? I assume that's because they felt bad, maybe, about leveraging my professionalism, even though I hadn't had any experience in coffee before. So that's interesting. That's interesting. I would say, from just my own perspective, don't feel bad. Like if I'm interviewing for a job that you think maybe like I'd be overqualified for or something, like I'm interviewing there for a reason. If you offer the job and I accept, it's because I either want to or need to. So, I mean, if you felt real bad and you felt like you could be honest and frank with the person, you could talk to them about that specifically and make sure that's not a problem for them. Would be my 2 cents there. Asian barista. I feel that when I was leaving my last job, I didn't want to bring a replacement that was amazing, that would not feel appreciated or paid well. I feel you there. I feel you there. Yeah, I have a similar experience. I was a general manager slash kind of like management consultant for this coffee shop, and I wasn't the pay for the hours I was working. It was like 60, 70 hours a week. The pay, the hour, I was on salary, but what if you did the math, the hourly rate was less than the baristas that were working there. And it was honestly just kind of aside from pay, just like the working environment is a shitty situation. And I knew who my successor was. It was someone that I had just hired in a different role. And when I was leaving, they were going to be my replacement, and I felt bad about that. So I honestly, I just had a frank conversation with them. I waited till we both were off the clock, and I walked with them like outside just to talk to them and warn them, like, hey, like here's the situation, like here's the deal about this job, just so you know, not trying to scare you away from it, but I like it was bad enough that I thought they should be aware. And so we talked about it. They had kind of already a sense of the situation, but they needed a job, and the pay was better than what they were currently being paid. And so they're like, okay, that's really good to know. I'm going to be looking for other work, but in the meantime, like I need this job. Like it's gonna help me. And they did have actually a really hard time with the job, not at all their fault. Like I said, it was a shitty ass situation. But I was grateful that I was able to talk to them about it, and that they were able to make the decision themselves about whether it was, the right path for them at that point. So yeah, I guess I understand like feeling bad about using people, feeling bad about sending someone in that, has maybe like a lot of experience, but is, you don't feel like they'll be appreciated. Ultimately, it's up to them, and I know we all know that, but like, if you feel like you need to warn them or talk to them about it, like I'm an advocate for that, like just being open and honest with folks. I feel like we could use more of that in the industry, any industry. But they might just really need the job, So it might be worth it to them, and they can use it as, launching pad into something else, maybe. J, also much more upward mobility and roaster connected cafes. Oh, right. Okay. Like what Z was talking about. Okay. That's my 2 cents. Anyone else who wants to share their 2 cents, feel free to message me. And I'm terrible at goodbyes. So I'm just going to say cheers.